so good to see your face again. And, I was telling you before, I was visiting my parents over Thanksgiving, and I worked in the Tucson market, and I saw you, Sean Mooney, and Matt Brode on air. And I'm like, I feel like I'm in the Twilight Zone. I feel like nothing has changed.
Yeah. I know. I'm glad you were. Thanks for watching, by the way, while you were home.
How are you? How are things?
Things are busy. There's so much going on right now in the world in general that, we have just it's been go, go, go at the station, to be really honest with you. It's just, with the inauguration coming up, we have those fires in Southern California, the content, and things locally here that are happening. There's just so much on the table right now that it's just been, once you're in the newsroom, it's just nonstop. Once you get in that door, it's just go, go, go by the time your, shift ends at night. But, it doesn't even end there because you're constantly trying to get updates on everything that's going on right now, in the world, even locally here in Southern Arizona. So it's just been very busy, but I like busy. I like to keep busy, and, I like this crazy news environment, me. So it's just, the adrenaline rush is fun. But there's times where you have to take a pause to refuel so you can have that energy to turn it back on. You know how that is, Stephanie.
You have to like busy if you work in news, right?
Yes, yes. It is not for the faint of heart, that's for sure. You have to be in it to win it, but it takes a lot of energy out of you. It definitely does.
Yeah, and we'll get to all of that, but let's step a little back and talk about your childhood and your upbringing. Where did you grow up? And tell me about your heritage too.
Okay, sure, yeah. Well, I was born and raised in San Diego, California, America's finest city, so not the worst place to get your childhood from, you know what I mean? It was an amazing childhood. Yes, I was a beach baby. I just grew up near the ocean. I just loved going to the beach, and I'm an only child, so I have no brothers and no sisters. So
Same
people are
with
always
me.
kind of, okay, see, so we have that in common. I have no siblings, and that definitely changes the dynamic when you grow up as a child because your friendships, I think, are so important to you because you never grew up with siblings in the first place. So I had a lot of friends. But growing up, it was a great childhood. It was just a wonderful adventure all the time where I grew up. And it's such a beautiful city that, I was really fortunate to be able to grow up there and have so many family members around too. Everyone, the entire family, my mom's side, my dad's side, everyone's in San Diego. So I was really blessed to have that. And, my background though, my parents are both Latino. So my father's from Mexico, he's from Guadalajara, and my mom's from South America. So she's from Bolivia. So I call myself a mutt. So I'm a little bit of mix of everything. So yeah, and they made it a point that when I grew up, that they wanted to make sure that I grew up bilingual too. My mom not so much, but my dad tried to enforce it a little bit more. But it was my grandmother on my mom's side who really pushed me to speak Spanish with her, and I am forever grateful for that because till this day being bilingual, I think, is just so paramount, especially in our industry when it comes to certain things, that having that quality to be able to translate, be able to understand people who are only Spanish speaking, I think has been a great asset in my career. So it was always fun growing up in a Latino community, in a Latino family.
Do you feel that your culture and your heritage fueled your desire to be a journalist?
In some aspects, yes, I think there's a lot of story ideas that, have again been really important, being able to be bilingual. I wouldn't probably necessarily say it helped me want to be a journalist. I think it was my professors in college that really had that drive, because I was going to be an attorney. I'm not lying. I almost went to law school because I had two professors. One was my advisor in undergraduate school, and they, really were trying to get me to go to law school after finishing my undergrad. And then I had this other professor in the communication department, and he's just like, I think, you'd be a great journalist. He's like, broadcast journalist. He's like, you should look into that and maybe start interning, at local stations. And one thing led to another, and I interned in San Diego multiple times. I think I just loved it from the get-go. And 3 times. I interned 3 times in my college career and then one stint out of college. But having those bilingual skills, even as an intern, really benefited being in the newsroom, because once the news director or assignment editors, once they found out that you had that skill set, you were able to help in some type of way. So I would say the bilingual aspect, absolutely, and being able to connect with the Latino community too in San Diego County, whether it was approaching someone, it really kind of diffuses any type of nerves, tension, when they know that, hey, she can speak Spanish. So, that also can get a good interview too. So there are benefits, to it. So that's kind of how I think it's benefited me in my career so far.
1000%. So let's talk about your career trajectory. You started as an intern in San Diego, correct? Where did it go from there?
Yeah. So I interned 3 times in San Diego. My very first job in television news was at the Fox station in San Diego. It was Fox 6 News at the time. And I had just finished my internship, and there was a position open for a production assistant. And the director, who I loved, he was so much fun. His name was Fitz. And I still keep in contact with him till this day. He's amazing. He was the director of the morning show, and that morning show was 5 hours long. So they needed a production assistant to help with everything. It was whether it was writing, rolling the teleprompter, and I did it all for a whopping $10 an hour. So that was my very first job, and it was the best experience ever. And what came out of that was that once I was done with my shift working as a production assistant, I would go out with reporters, and they would help me put together my demo reel. They would let me do stand-ups. They would let me follow them. And not all reporters do that. I'm going to be really honest with you. In the industry, a lot of them don't open up their, door to you to be like, hey, come shadow us. So I was really lucky to meet some great people at that station, great journalists who didn't mind me following them around. And if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't have gotten my first gig. Before I did that, though, before I had my first on-air job, I decided to go back to school. So I went to graduate school. I went to Boston University. I got accepted into their master's program for broadcast journalism. So that was almost a year and a half of a program, almost 2 years. So I was really excited. That was the best program ever. I mean, it just really honed your skills, and it was such a wonderful experience. Another tool, in my toolbox to utilize. And once I graduated from that program, that's when I got my first gig on air, was in Yuma, Arizona. And that was for KYMA TV. That was an NBC station. And I was a reporter / anchor there, but very, very first on-air job. And it was a lot of fun, though. A lot of good stories came out of that first job.
You make a good point. You talked about how you would shadow the other reporters and get those stand-ups. And I think that's a great point to make for aspiring journalists, to make that initiative, get to know those people, and just say, hey, can you record me doing this stand-up so you can have that reel to build?
Absolutely. I mean, if that's any advice that you can just take away from all of us who've been in this industry for a bit now, it's just, you have to be aggressive. When you're an intern, you can sit all day and not do anything. You have to take that initiative to say, hey, I want to learn this, I want to learn that. And having an internship allows you to determine, one, is this something that I really want to do? And you have to try everything. I was an intern for one of our editors, and I wanted to learn how to edit. I was a writing intern. I was an assignment desk intern. I dabbled in everything, and this was just not, for a week. I did those 3 internships for a semester each. So that's a long time, and I wanted to hone my skills, but you have to take that initiative. But in the back of my head, I knew that I wanted to be on air, so that was the last thing I wanted to do. And I went up to reporters, and I'm not going to lie, okay? I went up to one reporter, I remember, in the newsroom, and I asked her, can I shadow you? Can I go out there? And she goes, I don't do interns. And I kind of now understand why she said that. I'm going to be really honest with you. Now I understand. Now with all my experience, now I understand why she said that. And at first, you're shocked about how honest and blunt the newsroom can be, right?
Yes.
And that's why it's not for everybody. because you grow so much with meeting people like that, that listen, no one's gonna, babysit you. No one's gonna be soft around you. It's, a really hardcore environment sometimes. And that was San Diego. So San Diego is a decent big size market. People have a job to do. So when she told me that, I don't do interns, I was like, okay. For me, I kind of already had it that way. But then I found another reporter and they were like, sure. They're like, we're going to this today. Just come with us. Let's go. And, that's how it works. But you gotta be the one, putting in that initiative and being persistent.
I was going to say, I've had a similar experience with being told no. And there's this recent book that came out from Mel Robbins called Let Them. So if somebody does something that you don't like, let them. If they want to say no, let them and find another way. Let me figure out how to do it a different way, right?
Amen. Exactly. Yes. And and those people though that do tell us no, it's good to have that. Because
True.
when people are constantly telling you yes, 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 you're not going to grow. You're just not going to
1000%.
You're not going to grow in your career, you're not going to grow in your personal life. It makes you stronger. It gives you that backbone because moving forward, you've already experienced what it is to be, rejected, I guess, or, told no that, I'm sorry, I don't want to help you. I can't do this for you. Okay. But at least you've already had that experience. And I think that just makes you a stronger person in general, moving on in life with whatever obstacles, you face. So yes, I think we need those no people. We really, really do.
And I'm so happy you talked about working with the editor and working with other people in the department because now more than ever, you need to know everything. You really do.
Absolutely. And, till this day, I still speak to the chief editor who hired me to be his intern. I'm still friends with him till this day. He actually lives in LA now, Stephanie. And, he still does his editing, but I still communicate with him. If that's anything, too, that I could tell people that are interested in this industry is that when you meet really great people along the way, do not disconnect with them. Always make sure that you're reaching out to them or just checking in, how are you doing? Especially those who gave you the opportunity to do something, who cared and are genuine about it. Don't forget those people. I still speak to a lot of my former bosses who were in charge of interns, and I also keep really close contact with my former professors at university as well, because really, when it comes down to it, when you want to get a job or if you want to apply for something else, sometimes you're going to need these people. And that's my biggest takeaway with, going through my career is that I've never lost touch with those who really cared about my progress. And I think that's just absolutely vital.
Now, starting with Yuma, what brought you to Tucson, Arizona? Let's talk about that.
So I was really lucky. I didn't have to suffer much in Yuma. I only worked there for 1 year. But in that 1 year, I covered so many amazing stories, mostly border stories. I covered a lot of border stories, but it was a great experience, had a wonderful experience there. Very hot in Yuma. But for your first gig, not bad, because I was only 2 hours away from home to San Diego.
True.
So I didn't have to move very far. So that was a good advantage. But once I was done there, I applied to Tucson because that's when the MMJ started popping up. Multimedia journalist positions. That's when it started. That brink is where, oh boy. And they were looking for at least, I remember, they were hiring 6 of us at the NBC station in Tucson. So I remember driving over there by myself, and I went for my interview and I got hired. But they wanted to make sure that you know how to shoot, write, edit, everything. And, obviously you had some help with going live, but that was probably my first experience being an MMJ and getting all that experience. But back in the day, because it's completely different now, you had to have at least experience from another news station. They just weren't hiring right out of college at that time when I was, doing my thing. Like they wanted someone who had experience in a smaller market because they considered Tucson not a small market. You have to have some experience. But as we know, that's all changed now. But back then you really had to work hard, to get where you wanted to be. And that's kind of how I ended up in Tucson the very first time. was meeting, the news director, meeting the team. But there were a lot of veteran anchors and reporters. And I think I was really lucky to work with a lot of them at the time when I call myself like a cub reporter. That was my cub reporter time for sure.
And when I worked with you, you were already a main anchor at that point. How long were you in MMJ before you started filling in on the anchor desk?
I would probably say I MMJ'd for about maybe 2 years. For about 2 years. So my journey's a little weird. So I was in two years in Tucson, and then I left Tucson. I left KVOA, and I ended up reporting in San Diego for the CBS station. So I did that for 2 years. And so I was the breaking news reporter in San Diego for 2 years. And I loved reporting. And that's where I called it my boot camp, working in San Diego for CBS, because they taught me everything I needed to know in terms of, really being a solid reporter. No mistakes, going out live, covering what you have to do. It was a great team, very blessed. One of my favorite teams I've ever worked with so far in San Diego.
And reporting in your hometown. How was that?
Reporting in my hometown, it was amazing because one, you know everything about your hometown. You know the freeways, you know the cities, you know where to go. It's nice to know and be so aware of your surroundings and not being in a city that you don't know. It was so great to be home, but it was also great to see my family and friends, and they were so proud of me because they're like, oh my God, I'm so happy to see you on TV. You made it back home. It was such an amazing experience. But with that said, I knew down the road that I'd want anchoring experience. And to be honest, in San Diego, anchors at that time, they never left. I mean, those anchors stay there for years. I even worked with some of the anchors that I grew up watching, and I told them that when I got hired. I'm like, I grew up watching you, and I was able to now work with them. It was just such a priceless experience. I loved it. But I always knew in the back of my head that I wanted to anchor. So with that, I started applying to different stations, and then lo and behold, KVOA had a weekend anchor position open, and contacted, management, and they brought me in, and I got hired, and, end of story. So ended up being weekend anchor, and then finally the main anchor there at KVOA, she moved on, and I kind of went in there on my own, to be honest, and I said, I know I could do this. I know that I could be your main anchor, and I kind of had, my argument why. I had everything prepared, and I'm like, I'm your girl. And I really think they thought about it really hard, but we all know that it's not just one person that can make that decision in this industry. A lot of people have to make this decision, especially for a main anchor position. But I thought it doesn't hurt to try. And I think in the year of 2015, I anchored the weekends. And then in 2017, that's when I was able to get promoted to main anchor in 2017 with KVOA. And that was just an amazing experience in itself. I never thought that would happen, but it was a great experience, really good one.
So walk me through a timeline, a day-to-day of your job duties as an anchor.
So things have really changed with anchor duties. I mean, now I am no longer the main anchor because I left. During COVID, a lot happened during the pandemic. And I ended up leaving after being there for 5 years. And so the third time's a charm, management's like, hey, you want to come back? And I said, because I wasn't doing news at the time. And, the pandemic changed the dynamic of so many people's lives, as we know. But, I thought about it, and I knew it probably wouldn't have been the main anchor gig, just because, that was my choice. But I ended up coming back, and now I am the weekday anchor. So my shift right now it's a lot. I think I'm doing more now than I did when I was a main anchor, to be really honest with you.
Really?
Yes, absolutely. So right now I anchor Monday through Friday, and I anchor the noon newscast. So I anchor 12 o'clock, I anchor the 3 o'clock, and I anchor the 5 o'clock with Sean Mooney. So I anchor 3 shows. But on top of that, I'm also the breaking news anchor now for 4 o'clock and 6 o'clock.
Oh my goodness.
So I'm 12, 3, 4, 5, and 6
Wow.
every day. And so when I was telling you, once I get in that door, like I'm not kidding, Stephanie, it's hitting the ground running because once I'm in, it's just go, go, go. And the 12 o'clock is a 1 hour show. The 3 o'clock is a 1 hour show. And the rest are 30s. So it's just a long day. You're reading scripts, you're, sometimes doing interviews, you're almost doing it all in between anchoring your shows. I mean, I have edited packages during commercial breaks while anchoring my shows. I mean, it's all about multitasking, and I think that's what makes us such a unique industry, that journalists, we are the best multitaskers to get things done. We just really are. You learn how to get it done in a short amount of time. And that's just not even focusing on social media, right? You have to pay attention to social media. You have to pay attention to the show. Someone's talking in your ear. If there's breaking news, there's so many things going on all at the same time that's why you have to really figure out if this is something you really want to do, because it takes so much attention and detail to focus on what you're doing. And you have to be solid. You kind of have to look good at the same time, right? And you have to sound good, and you can't have room for error. There's just so much pressure that's involved. That's why this business isn't for everybody.
What do you think is a solid skill that aspiring journalists that want to become anchors need to have? What do you notice?
I think anchoring these days, I've noticed with the younger generation, those who want that anchoring experience, they think it's just about sitting there and looking pretty, right?
Right.
Like they just want to see themselves on TV. But it is so much more than that. There is way more responsibility when it comes to anchoring. You have to create that loyalty with your viewers, that trust. You have to have that credibility. And not only with how you're executing and how you're talking, it's also how you carry yourself. Whether you're professional about, the way you look, the way you speak. It's your body language. And the reason why I say this is because I get emails from viewers. I do. And they will thank me. Thank you for being professional today. And thank you for delivering the news in a professional manner. I mean, and I have these emails. I never delete them. Because you see what the viewer is noticing when you're anchoring. Yes, they're listening to your storytelling. But at the same time, they want to watch somebody who they trust. I'm like that. There's anchors, there's national anchors that I watch because I like them. I value them. They're smart. They know what they're talking about. And that's how I feel with my viewers, that's what I want to project. And that's what it's about. You have to do your homework. You have to know what you're talking about in your stories. Especially, I always say, you can't rely on the teleprompter as an anchor. You have to know the stories you're talking about. And if that anchor goes off, you better know what to say. And you got to use this. You got to use your head. And you have to be able to ad-lib. I think that's a big skill that over time you do end up learning. But ad-libbing, I think, is a gift because when you're, showing video of a car accident, there might not be any copy there for you to read. You have to look at that image and you have to describe it. So I think, paying attention to those aspects, communicating with your producer who's always talking in your ear, but also keeping, track of social media. There's so many components as an anchor that you have to make sure you're solid at. Also weather. You have your meteorologist that you're working with, depending on what kind of anchoring you do. But I have to know what the weather's like too. I just can't expect my meteorologist to just talk. You have to understand what the weather's like, maybe what's coming ahead. You have to be able to study and do your homework so you sound solid on air. And I think the more responsibility you get as an anchor, the more pressure, because they need you to be solid on air. The way you look, the way you sound, the way your writing is. And I feel that this generation who wants to do something like that, you get that opportunity, but if you don't do those things because you're more focused on the dress that you bought or the new eyelashes that you bought or the lipstick. When you're focusing on aesthetics too much, you're going to crash and burn because it's not helping you down the road, is my point. You can be in this market, but if you want to continue climbing the ladder, you really have to hone those other skills that I just described.
You make such a good point because you talked about tossing to a weather anchor or a meteorologist and saying, hey, it's going to be a great, beautiful weekend, right? And they could be like, no. So you need to know all of those other job duties as well as an anchor.
Absolutely. And it happens a lot. And that's all about doing your homework. I mean, and you can really be human about it. And that's what I try to be. I try to just be like, just state the obvious. And usually what I do is, hey, so and so, I went out the door this morning for a run. And I'm telling you, I had to put on a beanie. I had to put on the gloves because it was so cold during my workout this morning. Are we going to continue to see these cold temperatures?
Exactly.
That's how you do it. And that way your viewers also know a little bit about you as a human too, right? They're like, "Oh, Angelique likes to work out outside. She works out before she comes to work." I think that lets you connect with your viewers and they get to know a little bit about you. But, you're not giving too much away, but you're letting them know what you do before you come to work. But you're also connecting with your meteorologist and making that connection where, okay, Angelique's paying attention to the weather. But now let's get into it with our expert, right?
Exactly. Let's also talk about honing in on the anchor news voice. What is your perspective on that?
I think back in the day, like in the 80s and the 90s, that deep voice, was really admirable. People wanted that. I mean, I think women used to smoke cigarettes back in the day just so their voices could sound raspier. And all the anchors that I grew up with, they had that deep voice. But I think these days, it's a little bit different. I don't think they discriminate too much if women have higher voices, because I've heard it. I've even heard anchors in Los Angeles. They have higher voices. They're not all deep voices these days.
I am not. I'll tell you that.
There's ways to hone it, though. I've been told that about my voice, too. I had one, when I had an agent at the time, there was one recruiter who said, is there any way that she can maybe just work on her tone of voice? But naturally, women talk like that.
Right.
We are just born, biologically, we just have higher tone voices. We're women. Some women are very lucky and they have that very low voice. But I think over time, I've learned not to rush. Because when you get excited, when you get nervous, which, the nerves at this point in your career should be gone by now because you do this every day. But I think when you listen to yourself, which, I don't like doing it. I don't like watching myself. I don't like listening to myself.
Same.
Some people love watching themselves. I do not like to, but I do it because it lets me see what I need to be aware of.
True.
And when I hear myself, I'm thinking, okay, you need to slow down. When you slow down and you take a deep breath, your voice is automatically already like lower, and it fixes it. So that's always been my trick, is just to talk slower and your voice already goes like a few notches down. It's just that if you get excited, which I used to back in the day when I worked in San Diego, I had the best news director there. Like, I'm not kidding. He was the best. And props to Dean Elwood. He was amazing. Dean would always tell me that. He's like, just slow down. You don't have to get excited. I mean, they were just all about honing my skills and making me a better journalist. And that's what I loved about them. And when you notice that, that's how you would correct it. And for me now, I think at this point, I know what to do. But at the same time, listen, my voice is never going to be, super low. It's just not. But I've learned to overcome, the past kind of tone that I had and kind of just hone those skills to just calm it down, because you're right. A lot of agents, prospective employers, they listen for that too. They listen for those deliveries. And again, though, you got to have the tough skin, because even if they give you those critiques, it's not fun to hear that stuff, but that's part of our business. It's nitpicking, and that's just how it is.
I think it's also important to try to talk slower, try to deliver the information accurately, but also be true to your own voice, because I hear a lot of anchors that try to adjust their voice very deeply, and you can just tell, and it doesn't come off genuine.
Yeah, it just does. It sounds so unnatural when they try to talk like a news anchor. And sometimes I have friends and family that they just said, "You were made for this." They're like, "You just talk like that naturally." I'm thinking, I'm like, I know I kind of have like a different way of speaking. Like, I mean, I speak pretty formal like all the time. I don't know why. I mean, but for me, it's just, you're right. You don't want to sound robotic. You want to just be yourself on air. And I think at this point now, I definitely am. Like, we've have consultants, right, that watch us, and the consultants have told me, they're just like, you just talk to everybody like you're talking to your friends, like at a coffee shop. Just very
That's
relaxed.
how it should be.
Yeah. And, regardless of your tone, you can fix that. You can get help with that. But you have to be very comfortable in your skin as an anchor, even as a reporter, but even especially as an anchor, because people are tuning into you for, about an hour. I mean, for me, it's 2 hours with the 12 and the 3, that you want to be personable, and you just want to, be relaxed and comfortable, and you don't want to sound robotic, and you don't want to sound, fake. You just want to be yourself. But again, over time, I think you build those qualities, because I think when you're younger, getting into the business, you're just a ball of nerves. You're nervous, and that will gradually go away. But yeah, you're right, Stephanie. It's you don't want to sound robotic and, just not genuine when you're delivering the news.
And I don't want to draw on this too long, but reading news copy is a skill in itself. Mm-hmm. And I believe that it is just consistency, because how I read news copy when I first started in the business and then fast forward 12 years is vastly different. And it's not that I was doing anything remarkably different. It's that I was doing it every single day, reading copy every single day. And I feel like that's how I really changed the way I spoke and how I delivered. What would you say?
And it's all practice. It's just every day, constantly honing your skills. And I think this is the industry where I know a lot of people are starting in bigger markets right out of college. Like, mm-hmm. it's a different dynamic now. But I think sometimes that does them a disservice, because they haven't had any type of skills to hone, to practice. And when someone sounds green on TV, I mean, I can notice it when someone, you could tell, hasn't been in the industry that long, just by their delivery or the way they speak. And I feel that being able to just, hone those skills is very important, because reading copy, I mean, it's just copy, but you have to turn that copy into a conversation. And for me, half of the time, the copy that I see, I read it so much that I already know what the story's about, that I just read it off the cuff almost in a more conversational way. I'm not even reading it verbatim. And sometimes, there's breaking news that the script is already written up for me, because I have to just deliver it at a moment's notice. And sometimes I don't even get to read it. And it's just there cold turkey, and I have to make it my own right then and there, which that takes practice. But I'm not going to lie, though. I think sometimes in this industry, you either have it or you don't with certain things. I think there's just some skills that people have naturally, and there's just some that, unfortunately, it's just harder for people to grasp it. And I've noticed that with a lot of journalists that I've met along the way, or who I even see on network. There's some where I'm just like, they just got it. They're solid. They're so good. And they were meant to do this, right? And then there's some that, you also notice that, they still continue to do it, but maybe this isn't for them, but, they're still marching on. And so be it. If that's what they want to do, then let them. But you just know the ones that are just so solid at what they do. And that's all about being conversational, because it's a true talent to be able to hone that, for sure.
Absolutely. Here's a segue. You've worked in San Diego. You've worked in Tucson, Arizona. I would call mid-size markets. I think there's a lot of pressure from aspiring journalists to market jump all the time. What would you say to just honing your skills and staying in that market and building that community?
In bigger markets, they don't have time to mess around. This is a business. They're there to make money, and they want to make sure the right people are doing the job. And so there's no room for error. And there's a lot of pressure with a capital P. So when, you're working in these smaller, medium-sized markets, there's more leverage, there's more understanding. But when you get to that level, there's so much pressure involved that so many people that I know who have climbed the ladder to get to bigger markets, they crash and burn. They never even finished their contracts because there was so much pressure. Some of them would tell me they wanted me to do so much. They wanted me to do social media and, anchor this and report this. I'm like, well, of course. I go, you're working for a top 10 market. I go, what did you think they were going to have you do? It's like the higher you go, the more responsibility and the more hardcore it gets because, you're talking about ratings. Ratings matter for any station, right? But when you're getting to the big markets, being number one, it's insane. In San Diego, our morning show, that was my shift. If we weren't number one that day, because they were dailies, they were daily ratings, they wanted to know why we weren't number one that morning. But for the most part, we were number one. But they're counting on you to make that happen. So if you can't handle that pressure, you have to reconsider, can I make it in those bigger markets? And I'm going to be honest, the ones who have worked with me here in Tucson, a lot of them the majority of them did not make it. They all branched off to other ventures in their life because they couldn't handle the pressure of what it takes to work in a bigger market. It takes a lot out of you, and you can't be tired. If you have a migraine, if you have a cold, you just can't afford that. Unfortunately, you have to still turn it on. They don't care if you're sick. They don't care if you have a headache. You still have to deliver for sure.
Now, you also mentioned a little bit earlier that you did take a little bit of a break and then you returned. I know a lot of women are worried to take that break and then come back into news. What would be your response to that?
I think you have to reflect. I think sometimes having a break is good. It makes you reflect on what you want, what you're good at, what you enjoy. I've dabbled in communications, with, other institutions and stuff, and I liked it. I enjoyed it. But I think our personalities, I think we're just all so eccentric, flamboyant, and fun and personable. Anybody I've worked with in this industry is a people person, and we just have big personalities. And I think sometimes normal jobs, it's hard to connect, with those other environments because you're so used to being animated and being a storyteller that I think that's when you realize, this is what I was meant to do. I was meant to be a journalist because those other environments, you're sometimes too much personality for them. And they're just thinking, oh my gosh. And it's hard to control it because some things are so much more administrative, right?
Totally.
And you're just not used to those other quiet environments, and you kind of have to tone down your personality a little bit. That's at least what I noticed with myself, which sure I can do, but I really missed being in a newsroom and just being myself and having similar personalities around me like that.
Before I let you go, on a little bit of a lighter note, I have some quick fires that I'm hoping you can answer.
Yes.
Your coffee order.
It's really boring.
I want to hear it. I want to hear all the boring.
So I'm obsessed with Starbucks. I know. Sometimes I'm like, everyone has their thing.
I love a Starbucks. Go on.
I love my Starbucks. So in LA, though, do they have coffee bean in LA still?
They do, yeah.
Oh, I love coffee bean. Oh my gosh. I wish they had coffee bean here. But Starbucks, I love it. I like a medium-sized coffee with soy and about 2 pumps of sugar-free vanilla in there. That's all I do these days. I don't get fancy.
Okay. You don't need to get fancy. You do you, Angelique.
But I have to have my coffee. I will tell you that. I have to have my coffee. Oh my gosh. If I don't have that first cup for the day,
Same.
Yeah.
Your favorite travel destination?
Ooh, that's such a good one. Okay, so I have a new one because I've never been there. I really want to go to the Bahamas.
Oh, I've been a long time ago. It was so beautiful.
I have to go there, Stephanie. That's on my list. I need to go to the Bahamas. It just looks gorgeous.
Your favorite restaurant?
Okay, so favorite restaurant, I thought this over, and right now, so I went to Boston in October, and I think it's a chain, it's a steakhouse, but it was amazing. So it's Abe and Louie's. Abe and Louie's Steakhouse. If you're ever there, it's on Boylston Street. It's amazing. It's just delicious. The service was great. The food is great, and it just I loved it. I mean, everything that I ordered was delicious. So I think I went there too. I was there for about a week. I think I went there 3 times out of that week because I loved it so much. So I know that's kind of crazy, but I didn't care because I'm like, it was that good. I loved it.
I've also never been to Boston. I really want to go.
Oh my gosh, you got to go, Stephanie. It's an amazing city. So amazing.
Something people often get wrong about you.
That I'm tall.
Interesting.
You know that? Yes. I don't know what it is, but it's so funny. Viewers think that I am tall all the time. I think the way, because I'm going to just break it to everybody. Like I stand on a box when I have to anchor because we have to stand up now when we anchor. And I have a box because I'm too short. I mean, I'm not that short. I'm 5'3". But when I see viewers in person, if I bump into people at the grocery store or whatever, they always size me up. It's hilarious. They're like, you're just a small little thing, aren't you? They're like, you look taller on TV, Angelique. I'm like, well, I hate to break it to you. So
That's because you have a tall presence.
I guess. I don't know what, I mean, I'm glad I look tall on TV, but yeah, I am not tall, folks. But that's always the one thing that they get wrong about me. It's so funny.
It's so funny. I have the short torso syndrome. So anytime I'm at an anchor desk, I need a pillow because I can look tall if I'm standing, but if I'm sitting, I'm like, meh, like so short.
And you're taller than me. You are.
5'5"?
You are taller than me.
Am I?
Yeah, you are taller than me. But that's really funny.
The last movie, TV show, or book you watched and loved?
So I went to go watch Gladiator 2.
Oh,
I know. And I didn't think I was going to like it. Because, you know, when they always have sequels, you just don't know. And the first one's so amazing, but I was pleasantly surprised. The storyline, I loved it all. It was really, really good. So Gladiator 2, if you haven't seen it, hey, you know, go check it out. But yeah, I really enjoyed it.
and you can watch it on TV now. I mean, you'll have to pay, but you can watch it on TV if you want to rent it.
Yes, you can.
A snapshot of an ordinary, everyday moment that gives you true joy.
A snapshot, just like a picture or the ocean. I was home in San Diego not too long ago. I was home about 2 weeks ago and I took a snapshot. I always take a picture of the ocean when I go work out with my dad. We always make sure to go work out on the boardwalk, and I always make sure to take a picture of, you know, the waves, just the sound, because I do miss that. I mean, the desert's beautiful, but when you go to the ocean, it's just so peaceful, it's so therapeutic that it never gets old checking out the surf when I go
And it
home.
feels like home to you.
It is, yeah. I mean, I grew up, you know, with the water my whole life, so being able to go visit is always nice.
If you could switch lives with one person for a day, who would it be?
Jennifer Aniston.
I love that. Why? Tell me.
I love her. What do they call it? Like a fangirl, like fanning or
Yes.
fangirling? I think she's amazing, Stephanie. She's just so independent. You know, it's just, she doesn't live in that box, right? You know, for me, she's not married. She has no kids. She's got this amazing career. And, you know, she always takes a lot of, you know, criticisms I've noticed about her life and, you know, being single and being successful. And you can tell that she has to deal with those things. But at the same time, she's such a powerhouse on her own. I mean, she's amazing. She's amazing at what she does. But just her personal life, I would love to just live her life one day. I mean, she's healthy. She works out. Her hair is amazing. I love the way she dresses. I mean, her sense of style she knows herself. You can tell Jennifer Aniston, she knows what looks good on her. She knows what doesn't. She's just on it. And I think her life is just amazing. I mean, she's just a powerhouse in herself. She's independent, making her own money. I mean, to me, I've always loved her. I really look up to her in so many different ways because, you know, sometimes it's tough being successful and being a woman, and there's a lot to have to deal with in society, you know, in terms of aesthetics and, climbing the ladder, and there's so much that comes with it. But I think, she's just amazing at what she does, and you can tell she's really strong too. But in a whole, she's just the package, and I really look up to her for a lot of things.
As an anchor, it's so ironic that you say that too, because she's on the morning show. I'm sure you watched that.
I sure did, yes. And I only watched it because she's in it. I mean, everyone else was amazing too, but she's just great. I mean, that show was wonderful, and she really did a good job at it too. I think she's a great actress. She's really versatile, and she just, I don't know, there's just so many qualities about her that, I like about her. Like, ask my mom. I mean, she knows that I'm just like obsessed, because I think she's just an amazing actress, but you could tell she's an amazing person. I think she's an only child too, Stephanie.
Oh,
I think she is. Yes. We might have to check on that, but I think she is an only child. So there's just similarities, that I notice with her.
last question. If you could go back in time when you first started your career, what piece of advice would you give yourself?
This is definitely it. It is, your job is part of your life. It's not all of your life. You need to have that separation. It's paramount. Being able to disconnect from your career when it comes to your personal life. I should have probably, done a little bit more in my personal life, but it was all about my career to me. I've always been career driven, which isn't a bad thing. But sometimes now you have to reflect on doing things that make you also happy and balance it out. So that's what I was getting to. Balance is paramount when it comes to work-life situations.
And what a way to button this up, because my podcast is called I Am Not a Weather Girl, which of course means I'm a meteorologist, but it also means I'm a wife, I'm a mother, I'm a friend, I'm a multi-passionate person. I'm all these other things. I don't need to be defined in one box. So, Angelique, thank you so much for talking with me today. This was so much fun. You are such a light. You do so much for the community, and you're just such a good human being. And I thank you so much for coming on and talking to me.
Oh, I love this, Stephanie. Thank you for having me. I hope, I'm able to reach out and, make a difference in, any journalist out there who is trying to climb the ladder in their career. And I hope I was able to make a difference somehow and give some good advice. But yes, it was wonderful speaking to you. It's great to see you again. And you're just an amazing person too. And I'm so glad that we are still connected till this day. It means a lot.
Me too. Where can people find you if they want to find your account, watch you on TV?
Yeah, so, Monday through Friday, you can go to KVOA.com. We have a live stream. So, I anchor the 12, the 3, and obviously the 5 o'clock. And so, but I'm always there, Monday through Friday, always working. And then also it's Angelique TV News on Instagram. And yeah, if you want to shoot me an email too, it's alizarde@kvoa.com. So it's not hard to find us when we work in television.
No, it is not.